everything before that and in between, and then we decided to go woke and we changed the name to Department of Defense. So we're going Department of War.
What happens when a single word shakes the foundations of a superpower? On September 5th, 2025, Donald Trump walked into the Oval Office with a pen and a plan to rewrite history. In front of flashing cameras, he declared the Pentagon would no longer answer to the Department of Defense, but to a new, old name, the Department of War. It wasn't just a policy stunt, it was a message to the world. Some called it bold, others unlawful, but everyone knew one thing. America's self-image and its global reputation had just taken a dramatic turn. But what does this mean? Let's find out. The Oval Office had seen its share of history, but nothing like this. Cameras flashed as Donald Trump leaned back in his chair, grinning, before signing a document that shocked even his closest allies. He announced with bravado that the Department of Defense would now be called the Department of War. The room went silent for a second, then filled with confusion. This wasn't a minor adjustment, it was an ideological bombshell.
I wouldn't call it an attack. I'd almost call that one maybe even more than an attack. What he did with Iran, you saw the success of that operation. It was perfect. In fact, this was sent to me by the great company that makes that particular B-2 bomber, and it was flawless. It was actually flawless. They flew for 37 hours back and forth, and there wasn't a bolt that was out of condition. There wasn't an engine failure. There was no problem. It was a perfect attack, and it knocked out any possible nuclear capability for Iran, which nobody wanted to see, and we weren't going to put up with. So great job, Dan. And we've been talking about this Department of War. So we won the First World War. We won the Second World War. We won everything before that and in between. And then we decided to go woke and we changed the name to Department of Defense. So we're going Department of War. And I'd like to ask our Secretary of War to say a few words. Pete Hegseth. I think it's a much more appropriate name, especially in light of where the world is right now. We have the strongest military in the world. We have the greatest equipment in the world. We have the greatest manufacturers of equipment by far. There's nobody to even compete. And you see that with this and so many other things. The Patriots are the best. Every element of the military, we make the best by far.
For Trump, it was about image, not law. But for America, it cracked open deeper questions about power, perception, and what this country now stood for. As the clip shows, Trump framed his order as bold action. Yet the legal fine print revealed otherwise. It didn't officially rewrite the Pentagon's name. Instead, it created alternative titles like Department of War and Secretary of War.
Things are changing over at the Department of Defense. Today, President Trump signed an executive order changing the name to the Department of War. Signage already going up at the Pentagon in Washington. You'll see someone hanging a new sign for Pete Hegseth's office that now says Secretary of War. So actually, the department once upon a time did hold this name originally from 1789 until President Truman changed it to the National Military Establishment in 1947, and then it became the Department of Defense in 1949.
Congress had never approved such a shift, meaning this move was more theater than statute. But he has been doing all this on his own, and the reaction? Well, as former FBI General Counsel Andrew Weissmann explains, Trump is just winning.
Such an excellent point. When you think about what he did with, let's say, firing FBI agents and career prosecutors, or what he's done with law firms issuing these executive orders, from his perspective, even if he loses, he wins. The people who he fired from the Department of Justice, they're gone. They're bringing lawsuits. Even if they win those, eventually, they're still gone. And all that happens is the government pays back pay. That's sort of the main story of he got rid of them. The terrorizing effect within the department has happened. Same thing if you look at law firms. Every single executive order that was challenged has been struck down. The district courts are unanimous saying they violate the law. But the effect is still there. So from his perspective, it's like it's not even waiting for the long term. He sort of wins no matter what, even with the courts saying there's a problem. And you see it also where part of the thing that I'd say people should watch is, are the courts giving some interim relief to the plaintiffs?
Yeah.
Because without that interim relief, without saying, no, they're back in their position, he wins during that delay. He knows that delay is good for him.
Symbolism matters in politics, and Trump knew it. He played to his base with words that sounded like victory banners. Still, the applause outside the Oval Office was far from unanimous. And that's where the controversy truly began. For Trump, this was never about bureaucracy. It was about branding. Defense sounded weak, too soft, even woke, as he claimed. War, on the other hand, projected dominance, victory, and power. In his speech, he spoke as if America had been held back by a timid label, and he alone was bold enough to restore its fighting spirit. Midas Touch host Ben Meselas explains this well.
Donald Trump just wrapped up a disastrous press conference in the Oval Office where he said he was signing an executive order changing the name of the Department of Defense to the Department of War, which he does not actually have the legal authority to do. It requires Congress to pass a law. The reason Donald Trump says he's changing the name is because the Department of Defense got too wokey, and he says we lost every war since World War II because of the name and because it was too wokey.
That rhetoric has consequences. A single word can shift the global perceptions, and Trump was deliberately sending a message to allies and adversaries alike. The US wasn't just protecting, it was preparing to fight.
We have the strongest military in the world. We have the greatest equipment in the world. We have the greatest manufacturers of equipment by far. There's nobody to even compete. And you see that with this and so many other things. The Patriots are the best. Every element of the military, we make the best by far. So, Pete, I'd like to ask you and maybe Dan Raisin-Kane to say a few words, please.
Mr. President, thank you. After winning a war for independence in 1789, George Washington established the War Department, and Henry Knox was his first Secretary of War. And this country won every major war after that, to include World War I and World War II. Total victory, Mr. President, as you said. Then 150 years after that, we changed the name after World War II from the Department of War to the Department of Defense in 1947. And as you pointed out, Mr. President, we haven't won a major war since, and that's not to disparage our warfighters, whether it's the Korean War, the Vietnam War, or our generation of Iraq and Afghanistan. That's to recognize that this name change is not just about renaming, it's about restoring. Words matter. It's restoring, as you've guided us to, Mr. President, restoring the warrior ethos, restoring victory and clarity as an end state, restoring intentionality to the use of force. So at your direction, Mr. President, the War Department is going to fight decisively, not endless conflicts. It's going to fight to win, not to lose. We're going to go on offense, not just on defense. Maximum lethality, not tepid legality. Violent effect, not politically correct. We're going to raise up warriors, not just defenders. So this War Department, Mr. President, just like America, is back. Thank you for your leadership and your clarity. We're going to set the tone for this country. America first, peace through strength, brought to you by the War Department. We're back.
Behind the theatrics, Pentagon officials were left scrambling. Changing a department's identity isn't as simple as signing a piece of paper. Websites, badges, military seals, official documents, and millions of details would need updating, and the law still recognized only the Department of Defense. Without congressional approval, Trump's decree was more performance than policy. Still, it created chaos in practice. Why have things not been done legally as they should be? What do judges do here?
There should be. And where I think you are seeing it is the lawyers who actually show up in court do not say, and they cannot say when you're representing the government, you can't say, well, we're just going to ignore what you're saying. And so they are coming up with times with maybe losing, but at least arguments that are within the realm of the sort of possible. At other times, and this goes to your introduction, they're saying things that, again, aren't like we're defying your order, but they might as well say that because what they are offering as an excuse is so lame, so outside of the norm that you're having judges say, you know what, the presumption of regularity, the presumption that when the government comes in, they're going to tell the truth, good, bad, or indifferent, even if it hurts their case, that's sort of expected. I was in the government for 20 years.
Yeah.
That's what was expected. That's what judges expect. And when they're not seeing that over and over again, you are seeing judges, and to be clear, judges appointed by Republicans and Democrats, including judges appointed by Donald Trump, are all reacting the same way, that it is sort of outside the bounds.
The reactions came fast. Trump is making America ready for war, and that is a bold step coming from someone who has been a multiple-time nominee for the Nobel Peace Prize as of 2025.
Changed to the Department of Defense in 1949. And that was really a reflection of where America was at the time. Like most countries that had fought in World War II, it was sick of war, it was entering the nuclear age and looking to a future hopefully more free of war, focused more on preventing conflict than engaging in it. Well, of course, that didn't turn out to be the case. There was no more World War, but America has been in plenty of conflict since then. And Donald Trump's view has been that ever since the name change from the War Department to the Department of Defense, America hasn't won a major war. So he, as we know, is very focused on branding. He's decided that it's time to change the name back to the Department of War, sending a message. An interesting choice, it should be said, for someone who was very clearly campaigning to become a recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize.
With Congress holding the final say, the rebrand remained a symbolic act. But symbolism often carries more weight than law. Internationally, rivals pointed to the change as proof of American belligerence, while allies worried about strained partnerships. Domestically, critics warned it could fuel endless wars under a more aggressive banner. Yet Trump, unfazed, doubled down, repeated that he was telling it like it is.
We should have won every war. We could have won every war, but we really chose to be very politically correct or wokey, and we just fight forever. And then we'd, win, we wouldn't lose really. We just fight to sort of tie. We never wanted to win wars that every one of them we would have won easily with just a couple of little changes or a couple of little edicts. I was told that ISIS would take 5 years to win, and Dan Kane, when I told him how long would it take, he said, I think about 4 weeks, sir. I said, what do you mean 4 weeks? I was told 5 years by the people in Washington. You know who they were? 5 years. I said, you can't do it in 4 weeks. I actually flew to Iraq to meet with him, and I met him at a big air base. And remember that famous day, right? It turned out to be a famous day for our country because you're now the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, which is the biggest deal. And he is, because he did things that everybody said he couldn't do. So they said it was going to be 5 years, and he knocked them out in about 4 weeks total, 100%. We took over, and ISIS was gone.
Whether this survives legally or not, that is to be seen. But it definitely has made an impact. America's identity is now entangled with one question. Was this really necessary? Let us know in the comment section. Do you think Trump did the right thing?